Today we're going to talk about the steering system of the T4 and how to set it up. So I'm going to go through a few steps in how I build the steering system and how I set it up. And in this case I'm referring to the steering lock and the tow out. So I'm going to show you first of all how it's put together and what is different from the kit instructions. As you can see here, I'm running an aluminum servo horn. This is a clamp servo horn from Hoodie. It has a small clamp screw there, so you can actually tighten down the servo horn not only with a screw from the normal mounting position, but also from the sides. So you have basically two reinforcements, which makes the servo horn completely tight onto the output of the servo. And this, for me, is the servo horn that works the best right now. And on the servo horn I have put 8mm of shims. To use these you need to use the longest ball stud that comes in a T4 kit, so it's a 10mm ball stud. And why do I do this? Yeah, I do this because I want the steering link to have a straight angle towards the center of the steering system. Because if this steering link is more angled, the steering feel will be more progressive, and you don't want that necessarily. Normally we prefer to have a linear steering feel. And then we move on to the center of the steering. You can see that I have the big black shim in there. It's a 6mm shim on my car and not the 5mm that's in the kit instructions. And why do I use the 6mm? Yeah, it's again to change the angle of the steering link. So it's a little bit taller on the inside. So actually the angle this way is smaller, and that again makes the steering more linear. However, you need to pay attention to the steering link not touching the top deck, because if you don't use shims under the top deck, which sometimes we don't, then the steering link might be close to the top deck if you use the 6mm shim in the center. So you need to be careful with that and check that when you build the steering. So the next step is to set up the steering. To do that you need your Hoodie setup gauges, which I'm sure most of you have. And before you check the steering throw, you would want to check the tow out. So what I do is I just touch the steering wheel one time to reset the steering, and I check the tow out. So in this case it's 1 degree on each side. A lot of people get confused by what it means 1 degree. Some people think it means 1 degree in total, but actually what it means is 1 degree per side. So if the setup sheet says 1 degree, it means 1 degree per each wheel. As you can see, it's one degree tow out on each wheel. It's perfect. And to double check that, I check the length of my steering links to make sure they are the same. It's 24.7 on this side and 24.7 on that side as well, so that's perfect. These steering links need to be the same length, or they should be at least close. If they're a tiny bit off, it's not a big problem, but you should always aim to have the same length and to be able to achieve the same tow out with the same length of steering links. And again, the steering link from the servo, I tighten it fully, so this steering link turnbuckle is as tight as it can be in those ball cups. So as you can see, steering link is not completely straight to the ground. It's actually pointing a bit inwards to the car, and that's how we set it up. The reason for that is we want to have the same steering geometry to the left and right. And now to check the steering lock. So you switch on your radio, reset the steering again. You turn the steering fully to one side, and you check it. So in this case, 28.5 degrees on this side. On this side it's the same, it's 28.5. There's a little bit of play in the steering system, but that is perfect. So what you need to check then is when you turn it fully, I mean this is full lock that we just checked on the gauge, you need to make sure that the steering link is moving freely. Because for instance now if I turn up the EPA, you can see it's binding up, so that's too much. And you need to go into the EPA setting on your radio and turn it down a couple steps until it's moving freely. Same for the other side. It's actually close the binding there. I'm just going to take it down one step, and there it is, free. You can double check taking off the gauges. You turn it fully and you should see there's a little bit of play on both sides. It shouldn't be tight like at full lock. It shouldn't be binding up anywhere. It shouldn't be locking the steering, because if it does, it means that the steering system is then stiff and it's actually stiffening up your chassis, so it's going to affect the flex negatively, and you don't want that. So check it on this side again. Tiny bit of play. Perfect. So another tip I would like to share is about these screws that I have on my steering. A lot of people ask me about these screws, and they're from T-Works. They are a screw which not only looks nice but also takes out a bit of upward play in the steering. And furthermore, these steering arms, they are the optional T4 aluminum steering arms, which will actually give you 2 to 3 degrees or more steering lock. So these are used by the team on most conditions. I mean, most team drivers use these arms, and they're pretty important for performance. And as you know, on the 19 car we have an updated steering bridge, so the bearings are pressed into the steering bridge now, and that takes out a lot of slop which we had on previous models. So this is a big improvement on the 19 car in my opinion. However, these steering arms, they are of aluminium, as I said, and they will have some wear over time. So first of all, you should replace the bearings after some time to take away some slop, and you can also add a shim underneath the bearing onto the post, so that will take out some of the upward play as well. And the shim needs to be 5 mm inside diameter, so it's the same shim that you would use for your drive shafts on the inside, for example. I think that concludes it.